Now, I do a lot of interviews about imposter syndrome, podcasts, webinars, masterclasses, newspapers, magazines, and one of the questions I am always asked is, what is imposter syndrome? Okay, now, it's really important for us to agree on a definition of it because otherwise that interview is going to go a bit haywire. But what I've realized over time, including with the research study I ran in 2019 on imposter syndrome, is how many of us confuse it with self-doubt and confidence. And they're two different beasts that need two very different sets of tools. Welcome to episode 7 of the Ditching Imposter Syndrome podcast with me, your host, Claire Yosa, author of Ditching Imposter Syndrome. Now, today's episode, I've got some fantastic free resources for you. So make sure you go to ditchingimpostersyndrome.com/podcast/007, where you're going to find links to the resources that go with today's show. It's been a while since I published an episode. Well, this funny thing called COVID and lockdown got in the way, but the Ditching Imposter Syndrome podcast is now back every Friday, short and sweet, practical inspiration, so you can set yourself free from the fear of being found out as a fraud and not being good enough, because hint, you are good enough, and it will hopefully inspire you to step up to lead at the next level in your journey. So make sure you subscribe via iTunes or Stitcher or even on Amazon, wherever it is that you get your podcast. And make sure you're getting my newsletter at ditchingimpostersyndrome.com. Self-doubt, confidence, that's at the realm below the surface on what I call the imposter syndrome iceberg, which you can read about in Ditching Imposter Syndrome. It's about what we can and can't do, our skills, our behaviours, our actions. Imposter syndrome is about who we think we are. This is why when I did the research study and I asked people what sort of self-talk comes up for you when imposter syndrome is running, they were talking about, who am I to do that? What if they find out I am not good enough? What if they realize I'm a fraud, that I'm faking it? What if they find out I'm not as good as other people or as good as they think I am? When they were talking about confidence though, and their self-belief, it was about things like, can I present well? Can I do this? Can I do that? The deeper below the surface conversation is where imposter syndrome is hanging out, at that identity level. So I describe it as being the gap between who you see yourself as currently being and who you think you need to be to take action towards your dreams. And what happens when we have that gap? And if you look down, that gap's kind of a pretty deep ravine. Is we use things called coping strategies to be able to build a bridge over that ravine. And the problem with coping strategies is you can see through the slats on that bridge over that ravine. And as you're tentatively walking over it, and it does feel, there's trepidation there. If you look down, that's actually pretty scary. So when you work with me, whether it's through Ditching Imposter Syndrome, through Stepping Up to Lead, through working with one of my certified imposter syndrome mentors, what you do is you do the deeper work to allow you to close that gap. Now, while we're talking about closing gaps, here's some of the resources I've got for you this week if you want a deep dive on it. Firstly, I did a keynote for the London Stock Exchange Group as part of their Spark programme this week on the influence of imposter syndrome on the gender and BAME pay gap and lack of equity in leadership roles. It is free to watch. The link to go and watch this right now if it interests you, based on the latest research, some of which I haven't even published yet. You can find it at ditchingimpostersyndrome.com/podcast/007. And if you'd like to talk about how imposter syndrome is getting in the way in your company, book a call with me, claireyosa.com/call. Other resources waiting for you this week. I was interviewed by the USA Chamber of Commerce on the impact of imposter syndrome on small businesses. You can find the link to that over at the show notes, ditchingimpostersyndrome.com/podcast/007. And if you want to interview me about any of this, you can book me at claireyosa.com/interview. Other resources you'll find on the show notes include how to get your copy of Ditching Imposter Syndrome, which you can buy from Amazon or order at your favourite bookstore. And the show notes page is also where you'll find details of my Stepping Up to Lead programme to clear out imposter syndrome so you can make an even bigger difference in the world, and how to study to become a certified imposter syndrome mentor. ditchingimpostersyndrome.com/podcast/007. And if you're listening to this episode when it goes live, I've got a treat for you. Starting in just over a week's time, I'm running a 5-day challenge for you to create your personal inspired action plan to clear out imposter syndrome in under 90 days. Completely free to join us. So make sure you've registered at clairejosa.com/action to get your place on this free 5-day training. It's hopefully going to be life-changing. And it might be you close it because you shift who yourself see yourself as being. You know, if you're not beating yourself up as much, you're going to see yourself as being a better version of you than if you're constantly judging yourself. It might be that you let go of a block so you allow yourself to become the version of you that achieves that. When you close the gap, imposter syndrome disappears. There is no gap between who you think you need to be and who you see yourself as being. That ravine disappears. There's no need for that bridge, for those coping strategies, for pushing on through the fear. And you get to grow and expand and thrive so you can lead with courage, with confidence, with clarity and passion, and make an even bigger difference in the world. And in its simplest form, I describe imposter syndrome as the fear of others judging us the way we judge ourselves. So to truly clear imposter syndrome, it's about letting go of all the ways we judge ourselves, having processes to allow you to clear out the baggage that means we judge ourselves. It doesn't mean you don't still evaluate your performance back up at that behavioral level, but letting go of judging yourself so you feel truly comfortable in your own skin means there's no need for imposter syndrome. So I'd love to hear from you. Did that resonate with you? How do you define imposter syndrome and how do you see it showing up in your life? If you've enjoyed this, please do me a favor and leave a lovely little review on iTunes, letting other people know why you've enjoyed this episode and how it might help them too. And make sure that you've subscribed however you love to get your newsletter. Sign up to join us for the 5-day action challenge, clairejosa.com/action. And details and links to all the resources I've mentioned in today's episode are at ditchingimpostersyndrome.com/podcast/007.